Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Owing to the brutality of the Israeli regime and its forces against the innocent people in Gaza, so far over 62,000 innocent Gazans have lost their lives since 7th of October 2023. Spanish Prime Minister Mr. Pedro Sanchez says, let me quote, Gaza was in a catastrophic situation of genocide, unquote. At the same time, he has urged the European Union to immediately suspend its cooperation deal with Israel. We've also seen a statement by President Donald Trump coming regarding the situation in Gaza. Let me quote that also. I think great progress is being made on Gaza. I think we are going to have some good news. I was talking to Steve Witkoff and he did tell me that Gaza's very close, unquote. Media reports suggest that Hamas official says that the mediators have intensified their efforts to broker a new ceasefire and the release of the hostages in Gaza. However, Israeli officials says there hasn't been any progress as far as the negotiations are concerned. Also, it is pertinent to mention that Israel breached the truce that was reached on 15th of January, and that came into force on 19th of January. On 18th of March, which was of course brokered by the US, Egypt and Qatar after intense negotiations for months. Also in June, we saw the US vetoed a draft resolution at the United Nations Security Council which demanded an immediate, unconditional and a permanent ceasefire in Gaza to be respected by all the parties. We'll be taking a look at all these major developments, keeping in view these two important statements by the Spanish Prime Minister as well as President Donald Trump, and also those statements from Hamas side as well as the Israeli side. Also, we'll be talking about what could be the chances regarding any new ceasefire being reached between the two sides, especially when most recently we have seen the United States President Mr. Donald Trump playing a pivotal role as far as bringing in a ceasefire between Iran and Israel is concerned. We'll also be trying to understand as to what led Israel to breach the earlier truce that was reached in January. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Mr. Bakir. He's a Palestinian journalist. Mr. Younas, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by other participants. As they join in, I'll be introducing them as well. Mr. Bakir Younas, let's specifically talk about the latest situation as to what is unfolding in Gaza at the moment. The Israeli brutality continues. When it breached the earlier truce back in March that was reached in January, there has been a complete blockade on the entry of aid in the enclave as well. Looking at this statement by Mr. Pedro Sanchez that Gaza was in a catastrophic situation of genocide, could you give our viewers the picture of that enclave at this particular point in time?
See, the genocide is continuing still in Gaza. The situation in Gaza have not changed. It is deteriorating. It's in the worst day by day. Why is that? Because what we know now, the Jewish settlers, the Jewish occupiers who's occupying yet Palestine, have only one way. They only understand the language of power, the language of war. The Iranians, during these 12 days, have shown them that you can't occupy our country. You can't, do anything to us. They have sacrificed these leaders. They have sacrificed scientists, but the Israelis couldn't do anything to them. That's why they have asked the Americans, please reach to the Iranians and ask for the ceasefire, and that's what happened. The only point we are lacking now is the power. If Palestinians have as much power as the Iranians have, do you think the Israelis would have even remained occupying Palestine? No, they would have left already. The main problem now is armies. This situation will not be solved by negotiation. This situation will not be solved by a new proposal. The only thing can solve the Gaza and the Palestinian problem is the armies. We need an army to come and defend the Palestinians. We need an army who can supply arms to the Palestinians. Nobody is helping Palestinians, and this is the problem. Everybody is supporting Israel, and this is again the problem. So the equation is not balanced. The Israeli will never understand any other language than the language of war, the language of weapons. The Iranians, despite that were under sanctions for many years. They have developed their missile program, and because of the missile program they have destroyed a lot of buildings in Israel. They have shown them the power. The Israelis have found that they can't continue this war, otherwise the whole Israel will be destroyed. So they have found the only way to talk when they have seen somebody stronger than them is to come and negotiate and to come and cease fire. In Gaza, this is not happening because of the lack of weapons, the lack of power. Gazans don't have it. Gazans are in a very bad situation. There is, everybody's hungry. There's hunger everywhere. There is, what do you call it, Gaza is still under siege from all the sides. Israelis are not allowing any supplies to come in, food supplies, medical supplies, everything is lacking in Gaza. So Gaza, the Israelis want the Gazans to believe that there is nobody is going to support them, nobody is going to help them, and there's only one solution is what the Israelis is going to apply on them. And that is what we still resisting in Gaza. People of Gaza will not accept this. People of Gaza will continue, of course, fight because this is the right, and this is, but somebody is defending his country, defending his homeland. You can't blame him. Why you're doing this? The only blame, the only problem now we are having is the Israeli power, the Israeli army, the Israeli weapons, the supply of this weapons to Israel. This thing have to stop. Otherwise, we'll stay and we'll keep watching this genocide going on.
So what I understand from your take is it clearly establishes an asymmetrical form of conflict when we specifically talk about the situation that is unfolded in Gaza, the brutality, that aggression that has been unleashed by Israeli regime and its forces against the innocent people in Gaza as compared to what we saw in the recent conflict between Israel and Iran. So clearly asymmetry is there as far as you already mentioned that Gazans don't have access to those weapons. In that sort of a scenario, what's the way forward? How long the Gazans would continue to fight for their independence, fight for the liberation from this apartheid? For how long and in what ways?
For Gazan people, they're going to continue this for the last blood, the last soul they have. This is something Gazans will never change. The problem is not with Gaza now. It's a problem with the international community, the international law, the neighboring country. What are they doing? Where is the law that governing the civilian rights during the war? Where is the United Nations? Where is the neighboring country? Why they're not playing their role? So we actually lacking this. We are not lacking a solution for Gaza. Gazan they are facing it. They want to free their country. They want their land to be free. They want to protect themselves. But of course, what they are having of resources is very limited and very less compared to the full-fledged army the Israeli have, the full-fledged support that the Israel is taking from the Americans and from the international community and from all over the world. They having food supply, they having medical supply, they having weapon supply. All the supply they are having at the same time there is nothing entering Gaza. So actually Gazans now, what they're doing, and it's kind of miracle. What's happening in Gaza, standing in front of this army, they are actually missiling Gaza from air, from sea, from land, and despite this, still Gazans are resisting. This is a miracle, I believe, and I think this miracle will continue. The problem is not with Gaza now. The test is not with them. The test is is actually on the United Nations, on the international law, on the international community, and more specifically on the neighboring country.
All right. Let me proceed towards Mr. G.R. Baloch. He's joining us on the phone line. He's former ambassador. Mr. G.R. Baloch, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let's specifically talk about this particular statement by the Spanish Prime Minister, Mr. Pedro Sanchez, saying Gaza was in a catastrophic situation of genocide. He has also urged the European Union to immediately suspend its cooperation deal with Israel. Suspension of this particular cooperation deal with Israel, what would it take? Firstly, I want your understanding regarding as to what this particular cooperation deal of the European Union with Israel is, and what would it take for them to realize that the time has come that they have to stop that cooperation?
Thank you, Mr. Jawad. I think we have heard these pronouncements. We have heard these announcements. But you know what it needs? Gaza needs as a response, which has to be a collective response. That collective response, coming from European Union, perhaps would even that maybe symbolically might send some signals. But effectively, until and unless Mr. Trump, the president of the US, puts his foot down the way he did it on Israel to agree to a ceasefire with Iran, a similar effective and assertive step is required. And also, what is required is a collective action that you and me have been discussing. That after all those parties, Arabs, which are part of the Ibrahim Accord, why can't they leverage that Ibrahim Accord, send the Israeli ambassadors back packing, call their own envoys back? So this is, I think, I mean, under these circumstances, it appears to me, yes, good, the statement has come, but in material terms, if it does not impact, it does not save the Palestinians from the genocidal war of Israel, the state of Israel, against the helpless, harmless civilians, really it would not mean much. But it does create some kind of a diplomatic pressure on the Israeli state, which is actually bent upon continuing with the policy of making totally unlivable the conditions of the Gaza. So it is now.
Making the conditions unlivable for the Gazans. You already mentioned Ambassador Baloch regarding as to you referred to the Abraham Accords. Now, when specifically we talk, you also talked the way the U.S. played its role as far as reaching that ceasefire between Israel and Iran is concerned. Similar sort of assertiveness has to be shown on the part of the U.S. when it comes to resolve the situation in Gaza, as they've been subjected to so much brutality since 7th of October 2023. Now, when specifically talking about this particular ceasefire which has been reached between Iran and Israel, don't you think that was a time ripe at that particular moment? The strides could have been made to include this particular side of the conflict into that particular ceasefire deal as well.
Yeah, definitely should have been done, logically speaking, because after all, the Israeli offensive, which started after on the 7th of October, uh, extended from Gaza to Syria, to Lebanon, to Syria, to some of the parts of Iraq. Then ultimately it was to reach Iran. God thanks to Allah, and thanks to the determination of the people of state of Iran that they were able to withstand the onslaught of this Zionist regime. If if God forbid they were not able to withstand Netanyahu's objective of toppling the regime and ultimately declaring a victory right from Levant or the river of Jordan, the Arabian Sea to the river of Jordan. So I think into their hearts and hearts, I believe there is still some kind of a evil design in the minds of those Netanyahu and his cohorts who are there now controlling the state of Israel. Obviously, all the Israelis won't be that brutal, in my view. I want to believe that there's still some citizens of the state of Israel who believe, even in their own Jewish value system, which does not allow any religion, does not allow the spilling of blood of innocent people, and particularly those who have a right to coexist, for which the UN has mandated, the world has asked. So I think they dream that perhaps they will go on making their life so unlivable that they'll be forced to go. But it appears that this, while Israel is writing a chapter after chapter of black chapter of genocidal history, the people of Gaza, the brave, the valiant Ahle Iman of Palestinian people are writing golden chapters of courage, love for their territory, and their determination and indomitable will to survive and withstand the terror and tyranny of a most brutal state on God's earth.
I get your point. I'll come back to you, Mr. Baloch, for a couple of other important points to be discussed. Please stay with us. We are joined by another participant in the studio, Mr. A. Marshal, retired Saeed Mohammed Khan, senior analyst. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, looking at this particular statement by President Trump, when he says that he thinks great progress is being made on Gaza, and he thinks that they are going to have some good news. He was talking to his envoy, Mr. Steve Witkoff, and he informed him that the Gaza is very close. So how do you assess this particular statement? Do you find any sort of a hope that there might be an appropriate end to what we have witnessed since 7th of October 2023 in Gaza?
First of all, Tehami, thank you very much for inviting me to the show. I don't take this statement as something very positive, because the objectives of the Palestinians and the objectives of those who are supporting Israel are very different. While Gaza is the homeland of the Palestinians and they are sacrificing their lives to stay over there and get buried over there, we are seeing that those Israel and its benefactors have a different design. If this war was started on 7th October 2023 because Hamas attacked Israel, then Israel has 1,000 times killed more Palestinians than the Israelis that were
And still
killed.
they've been unable to eliminate Hamas, the primary objective
Exactly.
that they set at
So
the
when
outset.
President Trump, Tehami, says that the conflict of Gaza is about to be finished, then I am not looking at a solution which will satisfy both the Palestinians and the Israelis. It will be a solution which will be totally supporting the Israelis. They may ask the Palestinians to go and settle somewhere else, and they will use force and every might which is at their disposal
Do you
to
think that
achieve
is
this.
going to be doable, such a massive
No,
exodus? Is
whether-
it possible logistically in terms of geographical constraints? Do you think that would be a doable exercise even if Israel and the US resort to that? Given the
Egyptian
fact
Sinai is a doable option. Egyptian Sinai is a doable option. But I agree with you. This is something which is morally and ethically incorrect. My heart goes out for the Palestinians, because the Palestinians have really shown that they are the kids of this land, because they have fought for it, they have died over it, and they are buried over here. But the 12-day conflict between Iran and Israel showed that how much the Israelis own this piece of land. Within these 12 days, they say that more than 20 lakh people or 2 million people, they ran away from Israel to other places. So which means that they are there because this Israeli government is there very strong, giving them resettlements and everything. But they have no love for the land over there. So when unfortunately, when I look at the other powers in the world, like England, like Germany, like France, and I expect them to be standing up for the human rights and for moral and ethical values which they preach to us. They don't seem to be following the same over there. They still think that the massacre of the Palestinians in Gaza is justified, and they think that it is essential for the survival of Israel.
What about, there are certain other voices
So this is
as
what,
well.
when I hear such a statement, I take it with a pinch of salt, and I think that there is some other design behind it, the settlement of Palestinians back into Gaza.
There are some European leaders which have actually stood up, and there have been exceptions as far as this particular Israeli aggression against the Gazans is concerned, Spain being one of those countries. Now, Spanish Prime Minister has once again given a statement now saying Gaza was in a catastrophic situation of genocide, urging the European Union to stop the cooperation deal with Israel. So do you think it could have any sort of a significant impact as far as the European Union's approach towards Israel is concerned?
No, I don't think so. You know, Spain, with all respects to Spain, it's a beautiful country, it's everything. But I don't think so it has that voice in EU or in the European context, what England, France, Germany, they have. And all these countries who are nuclear, who are in the, in the five, permanent members of the United Nations, they are unfortunately standing behind Israel, and they are sanctifying all its wrong actions. Right? One lesson which is, which has come out of the Indo-Pak war as well as the Iran-Israel conflict.
That is exactly the point I was coming on. How do you draw the parallels? We saw the ceasefire being reached after 12 days as far as Iran and Israel is concerned. It's been, we're sitting here talking year 2025. Since 7th of October back in 2023, this brutality on part of Israel began. We saw the mediation happening, Egypt, Qatar and the US mediating a truce between the two sides at that particular time, which came into force on 19th of January, which was breached by Israel so conveniently on 18th of March. I mean, how do you draw the parallels? How a permanent ceasefire could be reached here?
You see, a solution which is beneficial to both parties only comes in when both the parties are equal in strength. When you have a party which is strong and a party which is weak, then the wishes of the stronger party overwhelm the desires of the weaker party. The lesson in both these wars, what is learned is that if one has to survive in this world, you have to be both militarily as well as economically strong. You see, Israel would have not attacked Iran had Iran been nuclear, right? Iran had surface-to-surface missiles. If they had even 1% thought that Iran could carry nuclear warheads on any of its missiles, they would have never dared attack Iran and continue to, negotiate with it on the negotiating table. Why did all the world powers, they went for a ceasefire, or they pushed us towards a ceasefire in the Indo-Pak war? Because if you look at it, look at what happened over here, there was a time for disdain about us, saying that they are always fighting with each other, let them die, it is okay, they will come to a solution themselves. And then there was 4 days of awe. Oh, what has happened? How has Pakistan reacted? And then it was a time of praise. From 10th May till today, it is time of praise. And then everything is going Pakistan's way because we are the victors in a conflict. We ended that conflict on a notion of victory. In the Israel-Iran war, the Iran has ended the war on a notion of victory. And that is why everyone is ready to give Iran concessions today. What concessions can Palestinians give to, let's say, Netanyahu or President Trump on the negotiating table, except what they would demand is vacate your land. So you see, the world...
They've got the hostages as well. Do you think that leverage is ample to, bring the other side to the negotiating table and reach a ceasefire, although it breached it earlier as well?
The way I look at Mr. Netanyahu, for his strategic objectives, if he has to get a few Israelis killed, it is okay.
So,
it is, a person who is killing 60,000 innocent children and women, for him, let's say 10, 15 Israelis,
but they have been,
in my view, would not matter if his strategic objective of taking over complete Gaza is coming to fruition. This is what it is. I think that it is now time it is, if you allow me to say that, it is now time for the world to again become logical and moral, right? The Palestinians are on the right side. They are the owners of this land. They were not, the Israelis were brought in 1947. I was while coming to your show, I was, going through Google, and I came across Mrs. Golda Meir's interview somewhere back in 1973, where she said that for 20 years she was a Palestinian in this area. And after 1948, she became a Israeli. So, the Israelis are the immigrants in this in this land. The Palestinians are the sons of the soil. So, I think the world has to stand up with the right, because with force, you can, for momentarily, put your point of view forward and maybe implement it. But in the long run, you are punished for what the wrong you have done, by being strong.
Right. Mr. Younas, we see President Trump being very angry and categorically saying that he was very unhappy with Israel, because as the sooner he made the announcement was ceasefire between Iran and Israel, it was Israel that went on to deliver the payload, which he said he had never seen the likes of that before, and he was quite clearly unhappy in that particular the sound on tape that we saw. So it means the ceasefire was still not in effect, but President Trump had huge expectations from Israeli side that they would abide by what had been announced by him, although that had to come into effect 12 hours after that. Compared to that particular sort of a scenario, when we talk about that particular ceasefire, which was reached after the mediation by Qatar and the US, after intense negotiations for months, that particular ceasefire that was three-phased, that was breached after 2 months on 18th of March by Israel. So, do you think, if not at that particular point in time, this time President Trump should be coming up with the same tone, with same unease and unhappiness towards Israel for being the aggressor over there against innocent people in Gaza?
Well, I think if Trump will do this, or at the same time he is actually, what do you say, like giving them a very angry statements, at the same time he's supplying them with weapons, supplying them with all the ammunition to kill the Palestinians. This contradictory means that he's doing nothing. See, the Israelis actually, they live now with only the American decision, the American help, the American support. Without that, there will be no Israeli in Palestine. And we have to understand one thing: the Israelis are not thinking about the punishment. Nobody is punishing them. Nobody is giving them the punishment. You have killed this much people, so you will be punished by this. This is not happening for them. And Americans will not punish the Israelis. They know this very well. So who is going to take all this blame? They are giving it that the Palestinians who have started 7th of October, the Palestinians who lived in Palestine, and when the Israeli came in 1948 and 1970, when they have taken the Palestinians who were there, they are till now they are taking the punishment. Why you are there? Why you are living there? It is actually, like a very strange situation. So we understand from this that there is nothing logic behind what they are doing. Nothing going to come from the Americans, because Israel now is actually an American, you can say, like an American state, an American made. Now all the support is coming only from America. Otherwise, those Israel would have left. We have seen how many weapons supplies are going from the Americans to Israel. So what we should do now, or how we should react as a Palestinians or as a Muslims or as a neighbors of Palestine, there is a lot of things should be done. Keep relying on Americans, that won't help. See, the Iranians haven't relied on Americans. They have relied on their own force, on their own missiles, on their own program. They have sacrificed their leaders, their scientists, and yes, they have saved their land. We should think on this way. The Israelis and the Americans will not understand what we want. They will not give us back our land. They were not going to punish the Israelis for what they have done for the Palestinians. And by the way, speaking about the negotiation, even in the negotiation, they are not asking the Palestinians just to leave. No, they want the Palestinians to surrender. For them, leaving Palestine it's not a solution, by the way. Because according to the Israeli strategy, if Palestinians go out but still claiming his right, he has the right to claim. They don't want Palestinians to claim, they want the Palestinians to surrender. Say, yes, this place...
Right, Mr. Younas, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. I'll have to go for a quick short break over here. After this break, we'll resume the discussion. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Views and News. In the studio, we are joined by Mr. Bakir Younas and Air Marshal retired Saeed Mohammed Khan. Mr. Younas, before heading for the break, we were in conversation regarding as to what could be the way forward as far as the Palestinian resistance against the Israeli illegal occupation is concerned. Now, I'd like to move to the point when we talk about the policy, the different policies, or a shift, a sort of a shift that you might like to call, when we talk about the previous US administration under President Joe Biden. Now, the truce between Hamas and Israel that was reached, of course, that was reached after President Trump became the president, but the proposal was already presented by President Joe Biden. Now, Biden administration was also not in favor of Israel going in Gaza and completely taking over it. What do you think is the policy as far as the Trump's administration is concerned? Is it supportive of Israeli strategy of completely taking over Gaza?
Well, I think the Americans themselves, they will never put the strategy by their own. They actually follow what the Israeli want. They follow what Netanyahu want. They follow the Israeli strategy. They know that the Israeli deals better with the Palestinians. They believe that the Israeli have a better understanding for the Arab world, the Muslim world. So that's why they don't actually take forward. They keep the Israeli forward and they support what the Israeli want. It's not that what Americans decide. No, the Americans don't decide what they want, what the Israeli want. They don't decide what the Palestinians' future. Actually, they kept it for the Israeli, and they believe that the Israeli is doing better. Now, the point is, will the Israeli be able to do this? See, there's one of the point, the people of Palestine, I don't want, because they have minimized and they have made it that it's a fight between Hamas and Israel, which is not true. It is the fight between the Palestinians and the occupiers. It's the fight between the people who own the land, the people who actually want this land to be with them because it is their own land, and the occupiers and the settlers. So taking it and speaking only between Hamas and Israel, which seems that other people are happy of being occupied by the Israeli, which is not true. See, all the Palestinians want their land back. I'm a Palestinian, I want my land back.
So what in that sort of a scenario, how do you draw or sketch a picture when we keep in view that very statement by President Donald Trump when he wanted to convert this particular enclave into the Riviera of the Middle East? Do we understand from that that they want the complete displacement of the Palestinian population from this enclave?
Can they displace them? Okay, let them do it. If they can, let them do it. They won't be able to. See, they have stayed 20 years in Afghanistan. What they have done? They have occupied before Vietnam. What they have done? See, occupying a country that won't last for long, you can't change it. And yes, you killed the people. Now they have killed around over 60,000, and many other people are killed. We don't know their numbers. That will never. You ask the Palestinian, would you accept to be occupied by the Israeli? They'll tell you no. Will you be? The Israeli want us to be their slaves. They want us to believe that they are the god of this country, this whole universe, and we should follow. We should obey them. We should believe that. That won't happen by us. And keep in mind, we are not fighting only because we want the piece of land. No, that's not true. We don't want Gaza. We want whole Palestine. And what is special about Palestine? It's the first Qibla. It's Al-Quds, Jerusalem. The main fight is about it. 7 October was made because of Jerusalem. Palestinians are not fighting only because they want this piece of land. They're not fighting only because they want Gaza. No.
So if that is not going to happen, that possibility, that remains to be impossible for such a huge displacement of the Palestinians, right, as per your understanding. So what about those Jewish settlers who have come over here and they've settled here in large numbers? So do you think that is going to be practically doable to send them where they belong to originally?
They actually, none of the Israelis have one passport. Either they have an American passport, Poland, different countries. They themselves know they come here for some time, they come here for money. By the way, there was a statement by Netanyahu himself, which he said that Israelis should understand this is not a hotel. When the service is bad, they are flying back. So it was his own statement. So, and this is their people. They know that they are coming there for certain money, a certain amount of money, a payment, and things to do. Otherwise, of course, they will leave.
Mr. G.R. Baloch, if you can hear me, please. When we talk about, we try to draw the parallels as far as the ceasefire that was reached between Iran and Israel because of U.S. mediation most recently. There was already a truce which was brokered by the U.S., Egypt and Qatar between Israel and Hamas. Do you think the U.S. president at this particular point in time could also express that similar sort of an unease as far as Israel unleashing its aggression in Gaza in breach of that particular ceasefire which it already agreed to Hamas?
This is what backbreaker between conflict which is between and Iran. And what goes out is
over here, it's a little bit of distortion. I think there's a little bit of technical issue. We'll try to reconnect with you. Mr. Marshal Khan, when we talk about, you already described quite in detail as to the military leverage as far as Pakistan had that very victorious point at the end of that standoff against India. We saw similar sort of a pattern that developed as far as Israel and Iran war was concerned for those 12 days. That factor primarily predominates the other factors. What about the economic factor? What about Iran leveraging its parliament's approval of a plan of closing the Strait of Hormuz as well?
Tehami, that was, I think, the main point which unnerved the important capitals in the world, and they decided that both Israel and Iran have to have a ceasefire. Iran was always there, on the negotiating table. They were, when Israel attacked, they were negotiating with the Americans, and when Americans attacked Fordo, that was the time when they were negotiating with the Western foreign ministers. So Iran had always been on the negotiating table. It was, once Israel got so much of beating which they could not take, they requested America to intervene and get a ceasefire done. So all America had to do was that they requested Qatar to bring Iran on the negotiating table and asked Israel to go and sit over there. So a peace deal was made. The peace deal was made not because of any higher moral principles that had to be fulfilled by the powers that be, but simply because Israel was getting a beating which it could not take anymore. Right? This, the question which you had asked Mr. Baker, I would probably go with your line of thinking and say that yes, if Mr. Trump is able to convince the Israelis to come to an amicable solution over Gaza, that would be his biggest victory in the diplomatic sphere. More than the accolades that he got for creating a ceasefire between India and Pakistan and between Iran and Israel, if he is able to get a good package for the Palestinians on Gaza, and and one of it can be that a one-state solution where the Israelis and the Palestinians can be a part of one state and where they can live amicably with each other. You don't have to be in that state, be a Jew or a Muslim. You have to be just a member of that country. So that is one of the solutions that is on the table at this time. So I would say that Mr. Trump would get a lot of accolades from everyone in the world if the killing in Gaza is stopped and Israel is brought to the negotiating table. It will be, I know for my brother, it would be a difficult, sip to take, because we are asking him that, give a part of your house to somebody who has come from outside. But then at times one has to, take a step back, and instead of being right, it is important to be pragmatic. That what can get you out of the present situation. Now, if you look at it, I think I also agree to this, the idea to which you highlighted was that it is very much possible that the Riviera which President Trump is talking of is very much on the cards, is very much on the, is very much in the plans. And when they say that that the Gaza issue is going to be resolved, they are thinking that the Riviera is going to be made soon. Right? So I wish and pray that that thing does not happen. There is an amicable solution in the world, because the world can only be at peace if it is run through rules and laws that are moral and ethical.
Right.
If the rules and laws are not moral and ethical, then it will be the law of the jungle.
Right. Mr. Younas, I have to wrap up the show. Do you have any point to make regarding as to
I
what
just want to
Mr.
say,
Marshal
yes,
Khan said?
Yes, exactly. It's a state, even one state solution. It will only be applicable if I accept, that the thief to take part of my house, which is not going to happen. This is illogic. It's totally illogic. You see, we actually understand that those are occupiers, those are thieves, those thief of land, the killers. So we never are going to accept. And this is something, even if I accept, the coming generation will never accept. So it's going to go on unless and until those settlers go out from our land.
Mr. Bakir, Younas, Palestinian journalist, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for being with us on this show. Mr. A. Marshal, retired Saeed Mohammed Khan, senior analyst. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.